Sacred Mysteries.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Mysteries Worldwide Channel. I'm your host, Reverend Mignon Grayson, and you are in the Sacred Mysteries School of Spiritual Learning. Today, I have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited about today's time with this special guest. We've been trying to do this for a while, and I will be introducing you shortly to Reverend Dr. Sushmita Mukherjee. Sushmita and we met in a seminary as we were going through our training to become interfaith, interspiritual ministers. And I've been wanting for a long time since those days to do something with her, because when I met her, her magnetic, warm, and wonderful energy just pulled me in. And I'm like, this is a woman, a person, a beautiful soul that I just wanted to know, and also to do some of the work in the world, because we are walking similar paths, but in our own way. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit more about her. Reverend Dr. Sushmita Mukherjee's life and career straddle cutting-edge biomedical research technology and a spirituality that is not easily categorized. In both scientific and spiritual realms, her work lives at the interface of image, imagination, and creativity. As a scientist, Sushmita works as an associate professor of research and a co-director of the microscopy and image analysis core facility at Weill Cornell Medical College in New York City. Her spiritual home is at the One Spirit Learning Alliance, where she is an academic dean of the Interfaith Interspiritual Seminary Program. Sushmita is an ordained interspiritual minister and a trained spiritual companion/counselor. Sushmita's spiritual work is deeply influenced by the teachings of Carl Jung and James Hillman and the creative perspectives of poets and writers, too many to name. Some of her specific interests include myths, dreams, poetry, art, with special focus on fractal art, altar building, guided visualizations, and the practice of soul collage. In terms of world traditions, Sushmita's work draws on Hindu and Greek mythology, myths, earth-based tradition, Taoism, Sufism, and perennial philosophy. Sushmita's spirituality is squarely oriented toward holding paradox, finding that yes and place that encompasses apparent polarities of light and dark, masculine and feminine, spiritual striving, and community engagement. Sushmita has a keen eye for inclusivity, especially inviting in anyone who feels otherized by mainstream traditions. Well, that is awesome. And I can't wait to touch on a lot of the work that you do. I am so in awe of what you do. I love your work. And I can't wait. Let's get started. So we planned on focusing on Hinduism, which I spoke of when we opened. And the divine feminine. And I want to start out with Hinduism so that we can build a framework from which people can understand the divine feminine in that container, as well as, wherever else you want to take it, because divine feminine is worldwide, not international. You will find her and representations of her in all across the cultures, ancient cultures in particular. So, But Hinduism, I just want to put out there before I let you jump in there, is Hinduism has given so many gifts to the world. In spirituality, for people to grow and develop. And I know in the US here, where I'm located, where we are located, it has been here for so long, and people have benefited from the ancient wisdom, from that tradition. But I also want to say that sometimes we get pieces of it and we don't get the fullness of the tradition in its cultural and its cultural perspective in particular. So I want to just start off with asking you about who you are, what you want, how you were raised, and what brought you your way to spirituality.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And yeah,
So I think I'll start by saying this whole idea of Hinduism as a religion, it's a Western concept. I think nobody in India will actually say, I mean, traditional Indians will never say that I practice Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even thought of that way. It's a way of life. They might say I worship Krishna, or I worship Kali, or I worship Durga, or I am a Vaishnav, which means I practice with Vishnu, or I'm a Shaiva, which means I worship Shiva, and follow that path. So these are really more like traditions, philosophies, way of being, and there's a full range within Hinduism of non-dual to dual to worshiping specific gods and deities. So again, like on one end, you have something like Advaita Vedanta. Advaita literally means no two. So it is the part of the Hindu tradition that speaks about the oneness of everything, and the and that divinity and me are not two separate things. Soham, I am that. So that's one sort of, if you think of it as a spectrum, that's one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum will be the individual deities and celebrations and temples and all of that. So that's, I guess, the kind of a brief overview. But this whole idea of Hinduism it's a Western construct.
I can see that. I mean, in my knowledge and my experience growing up here in the United States, religion separate, and it's called religion, and then you have your life. Whereas in a lot of, as my devotion is with Ifa or Orisha tradition, and there is no separation between your spirituality and your everyday life and your culture and the way you view things. And that, in my own development spiritually, was something that was very important for me to learn, because it brought a wholeness and a fullness, and it wasn't something that was over there somewhere that, So I appreciate that, because in ancient traditions, it seems to be that way. It is a culture. It is a way of life. It is what it is. It is part of the people, the culture, the land, and the spirit. So yes, I know. And we're very fractionated here. We're fractions, everything's separated and put into these boxes. Whereas, in other cultures I've experienced, it's a blending. And from what you just said, yes, I can relate to that, and not calling it Hinduism. I mean, we had to call with the Yoruba tradition, because we don't even know really. Some people call it Ifa, some people call it Orisha, some people call it Isheshe, but Isheshe means really just like the culture. So because it's not separate. So Hinduism as a separate thing, I can see it not being from the people. That's the name we gave it, right?
Yeah.
Other people in the world gave it to call it something. But yes. So your journey as a spiritual person, how did that come into being for you? How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, it's been a convoluted journey, like most journeys are. So I started, so my father was a mathematician and he was an atheist. And my mother was kind of somewhat spiritual, but not really. So I grew up sort of without a lot of heavy religiosity at home. And then I really became interested in Advaita Vedanta as a young person. And I started going to a monastery where this was practiced, and spent time with the nuns and the priests and so forth. And that's also the time when I came across this book, The Tao of Physics, which really is maybe about 16 years old, that made a huge impact on me. And then so I hung out with these people. I got deeper into the teachings. And then as a 16, 17, 18-year old would do, I would ask questions, uncomfortable questions. And often the questions were, what you're telling me in class and how the lives are being lived within the monastery don't seem to align. And then there came a point where I was told, you're too disruptive, don't come back. So I was like, okay, so I have nothing to do with spirituality. It's all a sham. And I'm going to become a scientist, and that's that. So I went on that road for, I don't know, a good 10, 15 years. And then I did my PhD in India. I came here as a postdoc. And it was only after I came to this country and I started to look back on my life, I really felt like something was missing. Something fundamental about me was missing. I'd spent so much time thinking about universal consciousness and the undivided wisdom of the universe, the mystery, all of that. I didn't know what container to put them in. And but I definitely felt the loss, the missing. And then as luck would have it, somebody introduced me to Joseph Campbell's work in comparative mythology. And I was like, okay, I can get behind this because this makes sense to me. And it's shorn of the religious covering. So I'm good, I'm safe. So I did that. So I started really understanding, studying Joseph Campbell's work. And then through that, I got into Carl Jung. I did also at that time get involved with a group of people, several groups of people who were working, and teachers were working with Native American spirituality, both North and from South America, which in retrospect, again, like after many years of doing that and then not doing that, I feel there was quite a bit of appropriation happening too, but I did not know any better. So eventually I got to a place where I'm like, okay, I need to have a more formalized or more, I need to name this. And I knew that I didn't want to affiliate with any religion. So then I came across One Spirit and interspirituality, and I was like, okay, this is home. So that's kind of how I guess I came in through the back door, if you will, of mythology.
I love it. I love it. That's, I love to hear people's stories because everyone is so different and we get to where we get to, however that happens for us. My journey is similar to yours, but not really with the science element in it, but very similar. So I can relate to how you had to kind of come into your own understanding of spirituality. And One Spirit is a wonderful place. We love One Spirit and what it does for all of us who are on that spiritual journey and the way that we want to serve the community. So that is awesome. That's really awesome. Let's see, some of the other things. Did you want to get into a little bit more about Hinduism and some of maybe the pillars the pillars within the tradition that are important, like some of the main pillars?
I don't even know if I can name pillars really, because each path is so very different. So yeah, I mean, like anything that I would say that applies to one path would almost be diametrically opposite for another path. So it's very hard, I would say, to name any pillars, because even whether it's theism, whether there is really God involved is an open question, because the non-duals they can be called atheists because they don't believe in God. There's no theos. So because I and God are one. So,
I see.
and then on the other end, of course, you have very specific religious practices
Yes.
and paths and steps and spending time. So
Mhm.
maybe one way, I don't know whether it's a pillar, but again, like any traditional culture, if you look in the olden days, how the
Mhm.
spirituality was practiced is you studied with a teacher. I guess that's maybe the place where most indigenous traditions have that common place is you learn from the master who has learned through their own life
Yeah.
rather than book reading.
Yes.
And the
Mm.
book reading can be part of it.
Yeah.
You have there are people who memorize entire like thousands of word texts, but it's about living with the master. It's about serving the master. It's
Mhm.
about being obedient
Yes.
uh, to the master. And again, the shadow of that is the guru
Yes.
culture and
Mhm.
the abuse of power.
Yeah. Hmm.
So everything, of
It,
course, casts a shadow, and that's the shadow of that. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop there because I'm not sure if I can suss out
yes.
like central pillars, really.
Yeah, understand because you hit on something very important too. What is actually, going down with these paths, learning them, the spirituality, it is learning in person with someone, or just with an, however it is. Now things can be done not in person, but if you have
Yeah,
a master, a teacher, an elder
an
as
elder.
an elder that
Yeah,
you train with, because I get a lot of questions and I see a lot of questions about Orisha tradition, and people want the books and they want, and you just can't, that can help you have a general understanding, but really, really learning, you have to
yeah,
be with someone. And it really depends. And every elder, every teacher is different in their perspective, and they will bring, like you said, their life experience as well as their knowledge of the system and the way it is into the forefront. So, into the teachings for you. So, yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. Definitely. So, now, I do want to ask. Now, I have a question, and I'm very curious. Do you have like divination systems within? Yeah. Okay.
yes. So there are all kinds of divination systems, in fact, again, from very esoteric
Mm-hmm.
to very performative.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Or not performative is not the right word, but very practical.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so you have like the full spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So there are actually we also use cowrie shells in certain
Oh,
things,
wow.
or
Mm-hmm.
rice grains, or there's all these different ways of reading the auguries.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's really the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's reading yeah, like just to give you and something that Joseph Campbell actually used to speak a lot about is you can think of Indian or Hindu culture way of being
Mm-hmm.
at two levels, and he called it, and this is the correct description of Desi and Marga. So
Mm-hmm.
Desi is what's communal, what's practical, what applies to the householder. Uh, it's the rituals, the festivals, the feeding of this god likes to eat this, that god likes to eat that,
Mm-hmm.
and you worship this god on this day and the other god on another day.
Yes.
That's
Mm-hmm.
Desi. And
Mm-hmm.
then Marga is the is the esoteric.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's more philosophical, more uh, meditative, more contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
And the word marga, the reason why I went to there from your question is the word marga actually comes from mriga, and mriga means the deer.
Ah.
And so the idea was that if a deer runs through a forest and runs often through a forest, then a path is cleared.
Hmm.
And if you follow that, then you can go deeper into where the deer lives.
Oh.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very holistic in its approach to nurture those different avenues of your life experience that's supported through those different aspects. Definitely. Oh, that is wonderful. And now, ancestor reverence, is that part of the culture at all? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Again,
Mm-hmm.
there are many, many ways of doing that, but definitely there are also certain periods in the year which is considered ancestral time, and you make offerings of food and things they used to like to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Food is a big thing, of course.
Yes. Big.
Yeah. So yeah, it's called tarpan, and you'd go to the river and you would offer this food, and so that's that. Plus, of course, remembering their days of birthdays, their day of passing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's a particular time of the year actually that happened about a month ago. It's called Pitri Paksha, and that's the time of the year when you're reverencing your ancestors.
Wow.
Again, in the old days, Pitri is father, so it would be the male lineage. And again, I mean, this is what makes India so interesting and so hard to explain, because we also have matrilineal cultures where I am sure the ancestor worship is done in different ways.
Right.
But I didn't grow up in a matrilineal, so I don't know the details of that. But there are parts, Indian communities in India that are matrilineal, but they're few.
Okay. Wow. That's really interesting. Now, in terms of what you feel are some of the major misconceptions about Indian culture and Hinduism spirituality?
Where do I even start? Yeah,
a lot, isn't it?
I think that's the problem of this Northwestern mindset where, as you said earlier, like everybody needs to be in a box.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to put an Indian in a box because, again, just like there is no Hinduism, there's really no Indian. I mean, it's also a post-colonial product.
Yes.
Because there were regions with their own kings and their own principalities and all of that. So I think, and this doesn't really apply to just Indians, but I think in general, the problem is homogenizing entire groups of people into a box. Like, so you're Indian, you don't eat meat, or you must be vegetarian, or yoga. That's another great, like, yoga is not about getting a body so you can go to the beach. I mean, that.
Thank you for saying that.
But at the same time, physical exercise is truly a very important part of yoga, but it's one part among many others. And so I remember when I first came to this country, I was at Barnes and Noble, and there was this book title called Power Yoga.
I think I've seen that one.
What is that? I mean, the two pieces of the word don't
come together.
Don't come together. They're not.
I know.
So
yeah.
Although that has changed, even in my time in this country, I've seen there are at least individuals and small groups that have gone deeper and tried to kind of really understand these paths. So I also don't want to like diss everything because
no,
there's some genuine interest and search.
No, that's very true because early on when I started my path as a teenager as well, and I heard when you were talking earlier, there's a place called Integral Yoga in
Hmm.
Manhattan, and
Hmm.
they tried to be as authentic as possible. I do
Yeah.
believe there were people from the culture that were actually a part of
Hmm.
the founding and the running of it.
Yes.
And I learned it myself as a spiritual practice, not as an exercise. That was never. So when it came out like that, when it started to become popular, I was like, oh no, they're missing so much that it comes with
Yeah.
yoga. But it was typical. It's typical of American culture to kind of distill out, the essence and take the form that is appealing, and that, and so that happens a lot with a lot of other people's culture here and even our own.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I remember even someone else that I knew that was studying yoga. She says, I don't understand what's going on with yoga here. She says, because with my teacher, we couldn't get to the actual physical uh parts of it. We had to go through pranayama first.
Hmm.
We did pranayama for a very, very, very long time before we even started the movements.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
said it was about development of the whole body, mind, and spirit all together. So
Connecting with the breath, right?
yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
the element that actually connects all the pieces.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
my breath and the breath of the universe. And how do I be with all that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there was this person who wrote about like American Hindu or American yoga,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I'm not remembering, but the whole point was that what you get in America is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not so as long as you can take it as that, it's okay.
Yes.
And I think there's
Yeah.
there's there's validity to that too.
I like that. That is something that it's like what you see is what you get. Take it for what it is, and it is
Right,
what it is, and what it does for people that's positive for their life, then fine. Yeah.
exactly. Just don't claim it as what it is not.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I would definitely like to move now into the discussion of the Divine Mother with you.
Mhm.
And you know, yeah, so I just want to open the discussion for you, with you, about the Divine Feminine in any way that you would like to start.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, that spectrum that I was talking about of the highly esoteric, highly philosophical to the manifestation of individual deities.
Mhm.
So on one end we have Advaita, which is there are no twos, and
Mhm.
then we have the first levels of Dvaita. So there are two.
Mhm.
So there are two, and those two would be the primordial masculine and the primordial
Yes.
feminine.
Mhm.
And again, and you could call it Shiva and Shakti. You could call it so Shiva would be the masculine, and Shakti, which literally means power,
Mm.
would be the feminine.
Mhm.
Or you could call it Purush and Prakriti. That's another way of saying this. And Purush would be the kind of the embodied animal beings, and Prakriti would be nature.
Mm.
And so that's another way of dividing the two. And Joseph Campbell actually had, again, a very beautiful way of describing it, which I think synthesizes a lot of deep esoteric wisdom. He would say, like, think about Big Bang, right? It's
Mhm.
it's like this idea. So something out of nothing. That's the moment of Big Bang, when something was created out of nothing. And so one can think of uh, maybe there's this non-dual wholeness,
Mhm.
and then there is an impact of time on that. And then it breaks into pairs of opposites.
Mm.
And the first pair of opposites would be the masculine feminine,
Mm-hmm.
or not male female, but masculine feminine. And to be again very clear about that, because these are energies, these are ways of being, these are stances, and they're not embodied male and female.
Right.
And then, of course, in India, you would have, for example, one of the primordial pair would be Shiva and Shakti. But there is also this expression of Ardhanarishwar, which literally means half male and half female. So half Shiva, half Shakti in one body. So that concept also is very, very ancient. And then, of course, there are all these stories and all these goddesses. There's like no end to the goddesses. And as time goes on, the goddesses become more and more specialized, if you will. So they have their own domains of where their influence is, very much like the Orishas. So you have Durga, who's like power, and she's also the mother, the caretaker. Kali is the destroyer. You have Saraswati, who's the goddess of learning and music and arts, and so Apollonian, Athena-like goddess.
Yes.
Then you have Lakshmi, who is the goddess of voluptuousness and material goods and food, and food can be also Annapurna. But so she's again more like an Aphrodite type being. So these are again archetypal energies, and I think all indigenous cultures, or all old ancient cultures, archaic cultures, have different names for these archetypal energies that people saw.
Yes.
And then in India, you also have very specific goddesses that have one task. Like there's a goddess who you would pray to. Again, it mostly now happens in villages, like far-flung villages. But there's a goddess that you would pray to if you got bitten by a snake. Her name is Manasa. She's the snake goddess. There's a goddess that you would pray to if there's a cholera outbreak. There would be a goddess that you would pray to if there is smallpox. And then actually also the fact that this is a living process, the goddess is still alive in India. There have been temples actually created to the COVID goddess. They call her goddess Corona.
Right. Yes.
So it's not a dead, static process. It keeps growing.
Yes. And the wisdom
and responding to the moment.
Yes, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was like, as we, as the elders and the wisdom of the cultures and the spirituality, as we experience the impact or the emergence of something that has such an impact and power on people, especially across the world, we do place it into its sacredness within, and in order to understand it and to have it be a beneficial flow to us instead of against us, if we can do that. Wow.
Or at the very least, try to appease that deity.
Yes. Exactly. Wow. And you
so I think there's a lot of similarity in the practiced cultural, the Desi part of it, with, I would say, a lot of the Orisha practices. It's making sacrifices, having certain kinds of food, certain color of flowers, all of it.
Music, dances, particular prayers and praise names and different things like that. Like one spirit could have several different names. There's one name that is the most common, and then you have all these different, and so when greeting and acknowledging, depending on what's going on, you use a particular praise name to honor and invoke and evoke that energy.
Exactly.
That's so powerful. And in particular, I feel like because we've had such a dominance of patriarchy or patriarchal, societies seem to dominate. And I know I've been reading a lot about different cultures in Africa. And if you go far enough back in certain parts of Africa, the society was matriarchal, and then at some point, it changed over. Maybe it was need or whatever the change was, it changed over. And I think that, because of the era that we were in, that martial energy, that masculine, very external energy in order to create the world and the societies that we have,
yes,
was needed to dominate. But now I feel like that has gone to its excess. And now it's kind of hurting, and it always has had its, like you said, the dark side, the shadow. Right. But instead of having that purpose, it is now kind of going wild and wreaking havoc in many ways. And I always felt like the divine feminine, now that the awareness is not, she's always been around and she's not coming back, but it's our awareness and our readiness to have her emerge more dominant and present in the world to now balance.
And so that a sacred marriage can actually happen. And the two can come together. Yeah, because the world is, the problem with patriarchy really is that there are no winners. Not even the men are winners.
You're right.
Because so much is lost in having to become a stuffed shirt.
Constricted, and everything has to be top down. Is always
exactly
who's higher, who's lower, and just the hardness of it all. We need.
I remember a good friend of mine once, as we were in graduate school, and his mother had died, and so he'd gone back home, and he said he felt this very strong pressure from his family to not cry.
Oh, wow.
Because he was the boy of the house. He was the oldest male surviving. And he said it was so hard. He had to find a place to hide, to cry.
Wow.
Because he was expected to be strong and present. Yes. And it's like,
and the
what does that do to your soul?
Yeah, exactly. It does. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. And and that has been so, men have gone through that, males have gone through that, for so long, that they cannot show certain types of emotions. Is considered weakness. And I think that is where some of the relearning has to happen, because it's not a weakness, and it's an expression, that has to happen in order for you to accept and honor the loss.
And I would say, and again, there are a lot of Jungian women who have written about this, is we as the daughters of patriarchy have also lost a lot of our connection with the more flowing feminine qualities, because that's the thing, right? You have to succeed in a man's world. You have to be 10 times better than, you have to be more man than man.
No, it has happened so much, and it is an outgrowth of the society and the pressure to, like you said, succeed, be accepted, to make a way, just to make a way.
Wear the pants.
Right, wear the pants.
I made my life in academia. I know it really well. And it's sad. It's sad to see older women who have succeeded, the first generation of women who have succeeded in academia. They've often had to do that at a cost to their social and connected way of being.
Yes, I can see that too. Wow. So to reclaim that, to, like you said, bring a balance and bring a wholeness and more completeness in allowing the expression. And because everything has a time and has a place. And then, I know that seems,
exactly.
But and what you have to, as a human, as a person, you have to have the ability. It's nice. It would be, I would say, helpful to have the ability to tap into whatever's needed, wherever it comes from, whether it's considered masculine or feminine, in order to get things done in a particular way. Everything in life that requires different energies and different skills and abilities and talents and techniques. And we should be able to draw on it with no shame or guilt or Yeah,
Be the alchemist, two
yes,
drops of
ooh,
this, one drop of
ooh,
that.
yes, the alchemist. I love it. Exactly. So I'm very hopeful for people being the awareness of her to come in her many forms in whatever way to say, the place in me, I need a place for her in me that where I can, and because we know that healing and nurturing comes from that divine feminine. And so we need so much healing. We're not going to do it under just the type of energy that's going on across the planet right now. So her being
And
here.
she's not just healing
Oh,
and nurturing, she's also fierce.
oh yes.
She's both
Actually,
the womb and the tomb.
yes, indeed, because even in the Orisa tradition, that all of the main ones that most people know about, they're warriors, and the one that they feel is, a lot of people they have a misconception of Oshun being this, coquettish, soft, and just want to, be attractive and beautiful and the arts and all that. She is the main leader of revolution. She's the main one that wants to see society heal because that is part of her domain. So if it takes her going out there and taking things away and cutting away things that are no longer needed, that she's like out there front and center because she loves humanity, in terms of seeing So yes, warrior, absolutely. Wherever it's needed, femininity is not just. And I'm glad you made that point because a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, you sound like a woman,"
Yeah,
as if it's a bad
yeah,
thing.
nice and sweet.
Right.
And I think we've paid a lot of price to live up to that nice and sweet.
It's so true. The nice thing.
Given up a lot of our power.
And that's almost on a daily basis. You meet that type of expectation for you, because even when I was in corporate America, everybody expected you to always, be nice and smile as a woman, especially.
Yeah, and then you have to work with for you, it's like the angry Black woman archetype. So you have to fight against that.
Yes.
I have to fight against, the submissive Asian woman who'll do anything and not ask for recognition or anything else. So, I mean, again, put people in a box is what this patriarchy does really, really well.
To further embrace the divine feminine, do you have any particular practices that you do or that can be done for people to embrace her more and more into their lives?
I think it can be as simple as, like, when you drink water, think about how it flows and how it has the water that I'm drinking right now. The hydrogen atoms in that water was created in the belly of the universe at the very first. Sorry, this is a new Mac thing. Now, I often think about that, like even a simple, because I don't think you have to make it complicated. I
Right.
think we make things too complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like remembering that this water that I'm drinking is the goddess, or the earth that I'm walking on is the goddess. That's Gaia. I'm walking on her body.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I walk in a way that it doesn't hurt her?
Wow.
So those are the kind of things that, or the food that I put in my mouth, and what's the story of that food? Where did it come from? Who was oppressed for me to get that food? Because that's also the warrior goddess energy.
Indeed. I love that. Yeah. Because we oftentimes don't think that far into, you know, eating. Where did it come from? How did it get grown? Whose hands? Where in the world? Because we know food is a marketplace. Food is an industry that is actually governed by the patriarchy.
Absolutely. Look at the food deserts in our urban places.
Isn't that something? and in
Yeah.
urban places, yeah,
Yeah.
where you think that there's a plenty, it's plentiful. There are actually
Exactly.
urban places that are starving.
I mean, I think food is in some ways it can be one of those tools of revolution.
I agree.
Because in India, there's this woman called Vandana Shiva, who's a scientist
Mm-hmm.
and an environmental activist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her biggest projects right now is for the farmers to be able to save their own seed grain so
Mm-hmm.
they can plant it again, because the India went through a phase of these big corporations
Yes. Mm-hmm.
basically selling cheap grain, but it becomes a monoculture, and then you have to buy the insecticide from them because they're susceptible to certain insects, and so on and so forth. And the biodiversity of the grains are lost. So
Yeah.
she's creating these libraries where all the different variants of these grains are stored, and the farmers
Mm-hmm.
can buy them back at a very low cost and plant. And the whole, she says her vision of the world will be the farmer will produce enough food so that he can feed his family, maybe his village, and if there is something left over, then export.
Yeah.
But right now, what's happening in a lot of India, in Africa, and South America is
Mm-hmm.
farmer is producing something which
Mm-hmm.
is being exported, and then he is buying much worse quality imported grain. It's all tied up: capitalism, patriarchy,
Mm-hmm.
white supremacy. I mean, it's all part of the same. It's all like different heads of the same hydra.
Yes. And I love the fact that I saw here, especially that people started growing in their backyards, and I even started growing like herbs and certain other
Yes.
small things to have that power to feed myself, that ability to
Yeah,
feed.
and I was talking to a friend of mine who went to Detroit recently, and she was saying it's a huge movement in Detroit. Like
Yes.
people have rooftop gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And Detroit has kind of come alive again after going through a phase of like urban decay.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there are these hopeful stories.
Yeah. They are.
And that's in some ways that's the goddess coming back, growing as food on your rooftop.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Indeed. Wow. That is it, and being aware of those things that where she is appearing. Like you said, I wouldn't have associated it in that way. But yes, that is
Yeah.
her showing up and blossoming through people's needs and desires to be human, to be free, to be independent, to be, okay.
And to be communal in the most positive sense of the word.
Mm-hmm,
To
mm-hmm.
be a community
Mm-hmm.
where I grow basil and you grow pumpkin and we exchange.
Exchange. Yes. Mm.
Yeah. That's our only hope, I think, in this time, is this small communities of relationships, small nodes of connection,
Mm-hmm.
and those then interconnect.
Yeah.
Talking about Hindu philosophy, if you will, there's this idea of Indra's net.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether you've heard about this, but it's this idea that Indra is one of the gods, is the king
Mm-hmm.
of the gods, like the Zeus of India.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of Indra's net is that this entire universe, or all creation, is like a net, a jeweled net,
Mm-hmm.
where each of the jewels, at each of the intersections, there's a jewel in the net, and each jewel reflects all the other jewels.
Mm-hmm. I am you and you are me. And
And
we are
just
community.
imagine that as an image of
Mm.
interbeing,
Yes.
as Thich Nhat Hanh would call it,
Mm-hmm.
and how different that is than we are all one and let's just all homogenize everything and
Right.
lose our particularities, our uniqueness,
Yeah.
our
Mm-hmm.
all of that. I mean, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that's what's going to decide whether our species makes it or not.
I agree. I agree. I agree. Having those relationships where you care, you care. Those when you have community, you care and you look out for each other. The small, from the family unit to the community of where you live and out to all the other communities that you connect with. And,
Yeah.
if we can look at each other as community, no matter where we are, that caringness, because that is something that you belong to. We belong to each other and we should care for each other to make sure. And that it is the only way, because that's where I see, and we're probably going off topic, but it's okay, let it flow. Is where, because I always said, if everyone really cared that about everyone. Now you have, of course, your core group, but the warfare wouldn't be necessary, because you could come together and discuss and make sure, because warfare is for many reasons, but um you can
Yeah.
really, yeah, you come together as various communities coming together as a larger community. There's no need for war when you really realize it,
Yeah.
not just in word
Exactly.
and not just in, but it, that takes individual, to me, work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Individual work leads to connections with other people that, we're all affected by that individual work, and we're all growing into a place where we really look at each other as one family, one human family, one earth family, one family with, because I believe in animals and insects and all of us being family. We're here in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
this ecosystem living together, and we all affect each other, because people.
And we know that the immune system of a being is most active when there is many influences, many inputs.
Yes.
So if we just get one kind of input, we're going to be very resilient as a
Yeah, it
species,
doesn't.
and that's what's happening to us.
Mm.
And maybe that's maybe there's still time to change. I don't know. I move between hope and despair every day.
Yes, me too. Every day. It's so true.
Every day. I think the way we have been doing the business of civilization ain't working.
It ain't working. No, it's not. No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So whether as a species we'll go extinct or whether we'll survive, I
Mm.
don't know. But
Mm.
I know how we are, which is this power over homogenizing,
Mm.
flattening everything, one norm,
Mm.
that has to go.
No, in order
Yeah,
for us.
because there is enough food on this planet today for
Mhm.
no one to starve.
I want to also give this time now for you to tell us about your body of work. You are doing so many wonderful things. I went to
Mm.
a wonderful website, and it is so beautiful and delicious. And I really want you to share the work that you are doing now.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not even sure what to call the work. It kind of doesn't really yet have a name, or it keeps changing so much that I can't put a name to it that actually sticks.
Mhm.
So I've been, so as I said, I mean, really where I feel like I come most alive is when there are words and images and they can play with each other.
Mhm.
And to not fix, what I love about image is that we can look at the same image like 10 times on 10 different days and get 10 different pieces of
Mhm.
experience, not just information, but experience from it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, Whereas words, so that's why I love poetry, because poetry has words that have space around them.
Mhm.
So they're not fixed.
Mhm.
So there's the space for interpretation and movement and things like that. So I in terms of my work, I work one-on-one with people, doing spiritual companioning counseling. I teach at One Spirit. I
Mhm.
give sermons when I'm called. But I think those are kind of the tasks, if you will.
Mhm.
But the work, the W, capital W work, the
Mhm.
opus, is about really feeling into what it is to live in a way that feels ensouled,
Mm-hmm.
not just embodied and ensouled, and also to see the rest of creation as ensouled. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not just me. I have the East River right out my window.
Mm-hmm.
She is to me an alive being. I can see her moods. I can see her change
Mm-hmm.
from day to day, from morning to evening, and she's an estuary, so there's tide. So sometimes the water goes one way, sometimes the
Mm-hmm.
and the Lenape name for Hudson River was
Mm.
Muhiakantuk, which means a river that flows both ways.
Wow.
So I think indigenous people knew this.
Yes, they
And
did.
indigenous people is all of us. If we just go back enough number of generations,
Mm-hmm.
all of us have that wisdom in us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I want to do work that speaks to this aliveness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And ecology, really the kind of the mycelial networks, the entire forest is one being,
Mm-hmm.
those ideas, and the complexity theory is another thing that speaks to me a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
these ideas of when there's a complex system, there is this uncertainty. And when certain conditions come right, you can have an emergence of something that's
Mm-hmm.
totally new, totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of things that kind of get me going.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so those, and embodiment. But again, I've been playing with this idea of embodiment because I feel like I spent the first, I don't know, 35, 40 years of my life living neck up
Mm-hmm.
in the world of ideas
Mm-hmm.
and thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So coming into my body has been a practice, and it's still not nowhere near done, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also starting to feel that even embodiment can be co-opted by the system as another navel gazing, self-involved
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so I'm kind of starting to think about embodiment in a more ecological way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cannot be well if you are not well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because either we are all well together, or none of us are well. And the forests show this to us. Like one tree gets infected, it
Mm-hmm.
produces this anti insect hormone.
Mm-hmm.
These are volatile compounds that move through the forest, and a tree that's much farther away already upregulates its own production. So by the time the insect comes, it's
Mm-hmm.
already has its immune system up. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we really have to learn to do this
Mm-hmm.
more and more, because you really cannot be well in a sick culture.
It's true. It's true. Mm-hmm. I also, yeah, because some of the concepts that I learned early on, when learning more about indigenous cultures and ancient practices, or ancient, I shouldn't say practices, but ancient ways, is that when you had the smaller communities, whether you call it the village or the tribe, when one person was out of sync, the whole community was responsible. They said, there's something that we failed that person in.
Yes.
And that we have to find out what that is, and together come and help that person heal, so that they can be that healed part and complete part of our society. It wasn't like, oh, that was their problem. That's your
Exactly.
problem over there. When one is not well, the whole isn't well.
Yes. And I think we have moved very far from that.
Far, very far from that. People are so, they're in silos. We're in silos all over the place,
Yeah. So even the self-care culture and all of that, I mean, great.
Yes.
And it's a huge shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, a huge shadow. And I think for me, I got really quiet, I told you, over these last few months, because with all that I was seeing in the self-care and even in the spirituality and all the gurus and the people talking about, this is how you reach this and that's how you, and it just seemed so, it became now not really deeply spiritual. It became a package, and it became a regurgitation of terms that people have given to different, how would you say, operating points within spirituality. And I was like, oh, it just made me take a step back and say, it's not really as authentic as I would like to see it. It becomes very surface, and it creates a barrier to your authenticity in your experience, in your spirit, and your development. And in that, you experience community in a more real sense, because my spiritual path is what made me realize I was connected to everything and everyone, and that, and so anyway, yes. And even in those arenas now, you have to kind of, I don't know, release, shed the surface stuff to get to the heart and soul.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently about like self-care and other care. And how do we do that dance?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Because
it's a dance.
Wow. I love that. And people can find you at your website, because I want people to, be able to connect with you, to see and experience the work that, at least what you're offering right now. And as it evolves and it changes, because I feel like our work, the work that you do, the work that I do, is evolving as we experience and evolve and go in the directions that we need to, that our spirit calls us, that the divine calls us in. So yeah, where I was, 5 years ago, I'm somewhere else now. And so I understand not having a particular name for the work that you do. You just follow, you go in and tap in, and then you follow that lead of spirit. So what is your website, if you could tell people, and then I will have it in the comment section, in the description for people to
It's
click.
called onseeing.com, on-seeing, like the seeing by eye, .com. And the whole focus is, how can I see differently? How can I see under the surface? How can I, that's kind of one way that I try to hold all that I'm saying with words that don't really do justice, but that's the best I got for now.
It's wonderful. Like I said, people, whoever's listening to this video, you need to go to her website just to experience it. You can't even really describe it in words. It's an experience. Her website is an experience, and you will gain a lot of seeing the videos, from the videos to the blog to the offerings. All of it. It's just it's so nurturing, So
it nurtures me to do it. Yes, that's for sure.
That is the thing, right? Yeah. So I'm very anxious, and I know you have chakra dance. That is something you're working on, developing that and getting that to us, which I'm anxious about that. Be a part of that.
That's kind of actually moved a little bit to the background right now. And part of it is what I was talking about earlier, because I want to do it in a way that it, even with all my considerations, I was feeling like how it was coming across had that ableist flavor to it. So I really want to kind of sit with it enough, let it marinate enough, so when it comes out into the world, it truly invites that interbeing.
Yes.
And not just my personal healing of trauma or well-being or whatever. So I don't know yet how to do that. So that kind of moved a little bit to the back burner until I have some inspiration.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's how you have to move. It has to move through you and from you when it feels like it's right. So I'll wait.
Yeah, because what I don't want is to offer something that feels exclusive or ableist or any ist.
Yeah. No isting.
Right.
Yes, but definitely. Well, like I keep saying, you have something beautiful and unique and healing that you are offering to the world in all of its forms. And I feel extremely honored, always by your presence, and that you taken the time to be and share with us today. It's been a wonderful time. And, if there's anything else that you have that's there with you that you want to actually add on before we bring the session to a close, I'll pause. And if anything comes to you,
I deeply enjoyed this conversation, and it's like having a good feast.
It is, right?
I don't know, somehow I'm with food today. It just feels like a good feast, like my soul feels fed and nourished.
Mine does too. Thank
And I
you.
think that's what we can do for each other.
Yes,
We can hold these feasts.
indeed. And now you're giving me an idea that's popping up that maybe this can be something that happens periodically, for like I would love a round table, maybe of a discussion. Yeah, that would be good.
I've thought about that a lot, actually. Like literally have some food there and
Oh, yeah.
conversation.
Oh, I love it. Yes, that would
Yes.
be awesome. So, yeah.
So
Well,
maybe something can
yes,
be cooked.
I think so. We could cook it up. You could cook it up. I could cook it up, or we could cook it up together.
Yes.
Something that's we just threw it out there and we'll see where
Mm-hmm.
that goes.
So I will offer a chant as a closing. And it's a chant that basically translates to the fullness of possibility of the divine feminine. And it says, the translation is, this is full and that is full. From fullness arises fullness. And if you take away fullness from fullness, only fullness remains.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is the chant in Sanskrit. Om Purnam Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May there be peace.
That was beautiful. uh, Again, I want to thank you for this time. And it's really blessed this channel that I've created for others to come
Yes,
and drink from the well of information.
exactly.
Thank you for adding to the well of nurturing that we have here. And you know, anyway, I just want to close
Yeah,
out with that.
yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been delicious.
Delicious, yes. All right. Well, that was a delicious conversation. And thank you all for watching this channel and this wonderful interview with Sushmita. And, like, share, and subscribe to this channel because we will be having more of these wonderful conversations with many people who walk different paths of spirituality. They're going to bring their wonderful insights to Sacred Mysteries Worldwide channel, the School of Spiritual Learning. And so make sure you come back and check. And also hit that bell so you will know when we post a new video. Until then, take care.